This is work in the present tense, adequately comprehended by conscious intention and by the first sort of knowledge I talked about. Information available to the farmer's memory and built into his methods, tools, and crop and livestock species. Understood in its present tense, the work does not reveal its value except insofar as the superficial marks of craftsmanship may be seen and judged. But excellent workmanship, as with a breaking plow, may prove as damaging as bad workmanship. The work has not revealed its connections to the place or to the worker. These connections are revealed in time. To live on the hillside and use it for a lifetime gives the annual job of work a past and a future. To live on the hillside and use it without diminishing its fertility or wasting it by erosion still requires conscious intention and information. But now we must say good intention and good, that is, correct information, resulting in good work. And to these we must now add character, the sort of knowledge that might properly be called familiarity, and the affections, habits, values, and virtues, conscious and unconscious, that would preserve good care and work through hard times. For human life to continue on the hillside through successive generations requires good use, good work all along. For in any agricultural place that will waste or erode, and all will, bad work does not permit muddling through. Sooner or later it ends human life. Human continuity is virtually synonymous with good farming, and good farming must obviously outlast the life of any good farmer. For it to do this, in addition to the preceding requirements, we must have community. Without community, the good work of a single farmer or a single family will not mean much or last long. For good farming to last, it must occur in a good farming community, that is, a neighborhood of people who know each other, who understand their mutual dependencies, and who place a proper value on good farming. In its cultural aspect, the community is an order of memories preserved consciously in instruction, songs, and stories, and both consciously and unconsciously in ways. That is, probably to have good farming on a whole countryside, it's probably better for people to remember that their grandfather or grandmother said, "Don't do that," than it is for them to have courses in soil science. A healthy culture holds preserving knowledge in place for a long time. That is, the essential wisdom accumulates in the community, much as fertility builds in the soil. In both, death becomes potentiality. People are joined to the land by work. Land, work, people, and community are all comprehended in the idea of culture. These connections cannot be understood or described by information. So many resources to be transformed by so many workers into so many products for so many consumers, because they're not quantitative. We can understand them only after we acknowledge that they should be harmonious, that a culture must be either shapely and saving or shapeless and destructive. To presume to describe land, work, people, and community by information, by quantities, seems invariably to throw them into competition with one another. Work is understood to exploit the land, the people to exploit their work, the community to exploit its people. And then instead of land, work, people, and community, we have the industrial categories of resources, labor, management, consumers, and government. We have exchanged harmony for an interminable fuss, and the work of culture for the timed and harried labor of an industrial economy. But let me bring these notions to the trial of a more particular example. For the last several months, Wes Jackson and Marty Bender have been working out a comparison between the energy economy of a farm using draft horses for most of its field work with that of an identical farm using tractors. This is a project a generation overdue, of the greatest interest and importance, in short, necessary. and the results will be shocking to those who assume a direct proportion between fossil fuel combustion and human happiness. These results, however, have not fully explained one fact that Wes and Marty had before them at the start of their analysis, and that was still running ahead of them at the end, that in the last 25 or 30 years, the old order Amish who use horses for farm work doubled their population and remained farmers, whereas in the same period millions of mechanized farmers were driven out by adverse economics. The reason that this is not adequately explained by analysis of the two energy economies, I believe, is that the problem is by its nature beyond the reach of analysis of any kind. The real or whole reason must be impossibly complicated, having to do with nature, culture, religion, family and community life, as well as with agricultural methodology and economics. What I think we're up against is an unresolvable difference between thought and action, thought and life. What works poorly in agriculture, monoculture for instance, or annual accounting, can be pretty fully explained because what works poorly is invariably some oversimplifying thought that subjugates nature, people, and culture. What works well defies explanation because it involves an order which in both magnitude and complexity is ultimately incomprehensible. Here then is a prime example of the futility of a dependence on information. We cannot contain what contains us, or comprehend what comprehends us. Yeats said that man can embody truth, but he cannot know it. The part, that is, cannot comprehend the whole, though it can stand for it and by it. Synecdoche, that is the figure of speech by which the hand represents the worker. Synecdoche is possible, and its possibility implies the possibility of harmony between part and whole. If we cannot work on the basis of sufficient information, then we have to work on the basis of an understanding of harmony. That, I take it, is what Sir Albert Howard and Wes Jackson mean when they tell us that we must study and emulate on our farms the natural integrities that precede and support agriculture. The study of Amish agriculture, like the study of any durable agriculture, suggests that we live in sequences of patterns that are formally analogous. These sequences are probably hierarchical, at least in the sense that some patterns are more comprehensive than others. They tend to arrange themselves like internesting bowls, though any attempt to represent their order visually will oversimplify it. And so we must suspect that Amish horse-powered farms work well, not because, or not just because, horses are energy efficient, but because they are living creatures, and therefore fit harmoniously into a pattern of relationships that are necessarily biological, and that rhyme analogically from ecosystem to crop, from field to farmer. In other words, ecosystem, farm, field, crop, horse, farmer, family, and community are in certain critical ways like each other. They are, for instance, all related to health and fertility or reproductivity in about the same way. And the health and fertility of each involves and is involved in the health and fertility of all. It goes without saying that tools can be introduced into this agricultural and ecological order without jeopardizing it, but only up to a certain kind, scale, and power. To introduce a tractor into it, as the historical record now seems virtually to prove, is to begin its destruction. The tractor has been so destructive, I think, because it is unlike anything else in the agricultural order and so breaks the essential harmony. With the tractor comes dependence on an energy supply that lies not only off the farm, but outside agriculture and outside biological cycles and integrities. With the tractor, both farm and farmer become resources of the industrial economy, which always exploits its resources. We would be wrong, of course, to say that anyone who farms with a tractor is a bad farmer. That is not true. What we must say, however, is that once a tractor is introduced into the pattern of a farm, certain necessary restraints and practices once implicit in technology must now reside in the character and consciousness of the farmer, at the same time that the economic pressure to cast off restraint and good practice has been greatly increased. I think this is extremely important in talking about agriculture and technology. If you have a system of any kind which requires the good worker to be both a dissenter and a highly capable